But at the same time that we were doing that journey on the west coast of Africa, on the east coast of Africa, my cousin, Layla, was traveling the opposite way, over from Eritrea, and she crossed over with her 2 boys because her husband was gone missing from Eritrea, and his crime for being missing, because we had no idea where he was at the time, is that he just stood against oppression. And you know, when you think of the day of Arafah, you think of the last sermon of the Prophet ﷺ, and he eloquently, when he said that, you know, it was like a manifesto of human rights, where he said, there is no, you know, we're all mankind are from Adam and Eve. The Prophet ﷺ, our Prophet, mentioned that, you know, in this sermon, he mentioned that there is no difference between an Arab and a non-Arab. There is no superiority between a black or a white. So proclaiming the justice and the human rights is something that we often forget in modern days. Even today, when we discuss that, you know, things about human rights, we forget that. So when my cousin's husband went missing, she took her 2 boys and left Eritrea. On their journey to Yemen, obviously there was peace at the time in Yemen. She was a teacher, a qualified primary school teacher. She was very happy that her kids were able to get into education, and she was teaching at the same school that her 2 boys went to. She started making a living, and before they settled properly, the war in Yemen broke out. After she did that, she basically decided that, you know what, it's not safe for Eritrean refugees to be in Yemen. She had to uproot herself again and her children, and they went to Egypt. In Egypt, with urban poverty, it was very difficult for her to register them, even you know, as refugees. Like, she had to register them as refugees, but she couldn't put them in education. It was very expensive. So she knew that it was time to uproot again. That's when the news of people are moving, you know, to Europe. They're coming into, and you know, if you look at the UNHCR's, according to the UNHCR, there are 65.3 million displaced people around the world. You know, when you think of that, it's a very big number. But when you think of only 1 million of those 65.3 came to Europe in the last 3 years, 1.8 I think was the exact number. So she was one of those who decided that she was going to do that journey, that dangerous journey across the Mediterranean with her 2 boys. Ahmed, her eldest, was separated from her at the time as they were getting into the boat. So I'm just going to go through the story very quickly, inshallah, to, you know, try and get my message. What happened when we came back to the UK? That's when, you know, the refugee crisis was happening, and I started getting involved as a mom who wanted to do something about this crisis. We all did. The aid was amazing in Greece, in the islands, in, you know, in the rest of Europe. Everybody was going across, but we weren't finding a solution to get these children across safely. With Safe Passage, that's what we're trying to focus on. It's the unaccompanied minors. So Layla decided that I'm going to do the same thing. But when she tried to get onto the boats that were prepared by the smugglers, she was separated from her son, her eldest son, and she only kept Muhammad with her. Ahmed, on the other hand, was on another boat, and the reason for that was we wanted more women on this side. You know, this is something that was just absolutely, there was no plan, there was no just no procedures in the whole way of getting these people shipped across the Mediterranean. When he got onto the boat, he realized that his mother wasn't with him, and he about 10 days later, he managed to get to Italy safely. But 3 weeks later, he's been waiting in a camp with his, you know, for his mom, and any news, he had nobody. And that's when we got the news over here in the UK that Ahmed's mom and his little brother managed to get on a boat a week later. Ahmed had no idea about what had happened to his mom. When we got the news, that her boat had 900 people in that boat, and only 200 people survived. The boat capsized in the Mediterranean. It's actually becoming quite normal. It's very numbing because these things keep happening every day. We hear about people drowning in the Mediterranean on a daily basis. When Ahmed crossed over to the, when when we heard the news, his aunt, who was in the UK, a British national living here with her 3 children, called me straight away, and she said, we need to find a solution to this. We need to get Ahmed over to Britain. He didn't even know about what was happening, and he was in an adult camp in Italy, where, you know, as an unaccompanied minor on his own, it was not safe for him to be there. So I started making calls. Even though I was involved with Welcome Refugees, I had no idea what were the legal rights for this child. How do I get him to the UK as soon as possible? And I contacted one of our Welcome Refugees with Citizens UK, and they said, well, there's Safe Passage that exists. It's an organization that was formed in October 2015, and they've managed to get a lot of unaccompanied children from France, from Calais, over to the UK. So why don't you contact them? And I straight away emailed them, managed to get a meeting with one of our partners, one of our legal partners, and I found out that Ahmed actually had legal rights. He had legal rights to come to the UK and reunite with his family, and to mourn his mother with his family. And for me, that was the most important thing, is how can he be on his own, a 13-year-old boy, to tell him that, you know what, your mother is not coming back. It was the hardest thing, and we didn't want to do it in Italy because it was going to be hard. But then we realized that the process actually took a very, very long time. It took us 6 months to get Ahmed to his aunt. Alhamdulillah, things are moving a lot quicker now. We have amazing teams, we have amazing lawyers. We managed to get a lot of the children from Calais across here safely, and that's what Safe Passage is here for. Please do, inshallah, when you finish, eating